When a body is found, the world sees a victim of senseless violence. They call it chaos, brutality, a random act of madness. But what if they're wrong? What if every detail, the location, the way the victim was chosen, the specific acts committed, wasn't chaos at all? What if it was a script, a message, a dark ritual? Using the profound work of Carl Jung, we are about to decode the hidden symbolism behind a serial killer's actions. This is not about the horror of the crime itself. It's about the terrifying meaning behind it. And what you learn will forever change how you see the anatomy of evil.
To understand this, you first have to understand the basic truth about people. Humans are ritualistic beings. Carl Jung knew this. When our inner world is falling apart, when we feel powerless and lost in chaos, our psyche has a desperate need to create order on the outside. We create routines, traditions, ceremonies. These rituals, big or small, are anchors. They are our way of telling the universe, I am here. I have some control. For most of us, this is healthy. It's lighting a candle, a morning coffee routine, a holiday tradition. But what happens when someone's inner world isn't just chaotic, but is a raging infinite storm of shame, rage, and profound powerlessness? What happens when their shadow has completely consumed them? This is the mind of the person who will become a serial killer. Inside them, there is no anchor. There is only the storm. Their entire existence is a fantasy of power, a desperate daydream to escape the feeling of being nothing. For years, this fantasy just plays out in their head. It's their private movie, their secret world where they are the one in charge, the one with all the power. But eventually, for some, the barrier between fantasy and reality begins to crack. The need to make that fantasy real, to feel that power for just one moment in the physical world, becomes an unbearable pressure. And this is where the first crime is born. That first act is almost never just a simple act of violence. It is the performance of the first ritual. It is the killer taking the chaotic script from inside their head and acting it out on the stage of the real world. For the first time, they feel that godlike control they've only ever dreamed of, the power over life and death, the absolute dominance. In that moment, the inner storm goes quiet. There is a terrifying peace, and that feeling of peace, of control, is the most powerful drug they have ever known. But the effect doesn't last. The real world floods back in, the feeling of being small, powerless, and worthless returns, and the hunger for the ritual, the addiction to that moment of divine power begins again, but stronger this time. So they have to do it again and again, each time trying to perfect the ritual to make it match the fantasy in their head more closely, to get that same perfect feeling of control. They become a priest of their own dark religion, and the murders are their ceremonies. So, to understand the mind of the killer, you have to stop looking at the crime as a random act and start seeing it as a text. You have to learn to read the language of their ritual. Every single element, from start to finish, is a word in a dark sentence. It's a message, not for us, but for themselves. Generally, this dark language is made up of three main parts. First, the choice of the victim, which is the symbolic offering. Second, the location of the crime, which is the sacred altar. And third, the specific method of the act, the signature, which is the liturgy, the script of the ceremony itself. These are not just the details of a crime. They are the chapters in a story the killer's soul is screaming, a story about their deepest fears, their most twisted desires, and the archetypes that haunt their every waking moment. The first word in this story is always the same: the choice of who must be the offering.
The first and most misunderstood part of the ritual is the offering, the victim. From the outside, it looks like a matter of opportunity, a person who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But in the psychic reality of the killer, there is no such thing as the wrong place. There is only the right symbol. The killer's shadow, that raging storm inside, is not looking for a person. It is looking for an archetype to sacrifice.
The person they choose is not a human being to them. They are a prop. They are an actor who has been cast in a role in the killer's private movie, and they don't even know the script is being written. What does this mean? It means the choice is never about the victim as a whole person. It is about a single, symbolic trait they possess. It could be their hair color, their profession, their age, a certain look in their eye. This trait is a key. It unlocks a powerful, unresolved complex within the killer's mind. For example, think of a killer whose psyche was destroyed by a domineering, cruel mother. He is haunted by what Jung would call the archetype of the terrible mother. He feels perpetually weak and emasculated by this internal force. So his shadow goes hunting. It's not looking for his actual mother. It's looking for the symbol of her. He might target women of a certain age, or with a certain hair color, or who have a confident, authoritative way of speaking. When he finds this person, he doesn't see a stranger. He sees the archetype. He sees the source of all his shame and powerlessness made real, standing right in front of him. And by performing his ritual on this symbolic offering, he feels for a moment that he has gained power over the terrible mother archetype itself. He feels he has silenced the voice of judgment inside his own head. The victim, in this dark transaction, is completely dehumanized. Their life, their hopes, their family, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is their symbolic value. They are a stand-in for a ghost. This is the reality shock of it. We see a human life being taken. The killer sees a symbol being destroyed. The same logic applies to other archetypes. A killer who feels intellectually inferior and worthless might target victims who are students or librarians, symbols of the age the sage. By destroying them, he symbolically destroys the knowledge and intelligence that makes him feel small. A killer consumed by a twisted sense of morality and purity might target prostitutes, symbols of the seductress or the fallen woman, believing his ritual is a form of cleansing. In every case, the killer is trying to solve an internal problem with an external act. He is trying to kill a part of himself by killing someone else who represents that part. It is a desperate, futile, and bloody form of psychic surgery. The victim is chosen because their very existence reminds the killer's shadow of what it hates, what it fears, or what it desperately wants but can never have. They are a mirror to the killer's own deepest wound. But choosing the offering is only the first step. Once the symbol has been chosen, the ritual needs a stage, a sacred space, an altar. And the choice of this location is just as symbolic and just as crucial as the choice of the victim.
The place where the ritual happens is never an accident. It is the sacred ground, the temple, the stage upon which the killer's internal drama is finally performed. The location is chosen to amplify the meaning of the act. It gives the ritual its power. Sometimes, the killer chooses a location from their own past, a wooded area they played in as a child, an abandoned building in their old neighborhood. By bringing the victim, the symbol of their conflict, to this place, they are attempting a kind of dark time travel. They are trying to go back and rewrite their own history. They're trying to take a place where they once felt powerless and transform it into a place where they are God. They are trying to conquer the ghosts of their past by creating a new, more powerful ghost in their place. Other times, the location is about trespassing. The killer might choose a place that represents a world they feel shut out of, a wealthy neighborhood, a university campus, a place of beauty and prestige. Committing their act here is a symbolic invasion. It's their way of screaming at society, you can build your walls, you can have your perfect lives, but I can walk right in and desecrate your sacred spaces. I am more powerful than your rules. The location becomes part of the message. It is an act of psychological warfare against a world they despise. And sometimes the location is about purity, a remote spot in nature, deep in the woods by a river. Here, the killer creates their own private cathedral, far from the eyes of society. In this space, they are the only power that matters. They are a god of nature, of life and death, and the ritual becomes a primordial act, free from any judgment but their own. The altar is set. The offering has been chosen. Now comes the heart of the ceremony, the liturgy. This is what investigators call the signature, and this is the most important part to understand. In any crime, there's the stuff the killer has to do to get the job done. That's the MO, the method. But the signature, that's different. The signature is what the killer needs to do. It's the part that isn't necessary to commit the crime, but is absolutely necessary for the killer to fulfill the fantasy. It's the part that gratifies the shadow. These are the ritualistic acts themselves, and they are a direct window into the killer's soul. They are a physical expression of their deepest archetypal fantasies. For example, the act of binding the victim. On the surface, it's for control, but symbolically, it is everything. It is the ultimate representation of dominance, of rendering the powerful, or the symbol of the powerful, completely helpless. It is the acting out of their own lifelong feeling of being psychologically bound and helpless. Or consider the act of posing the body after the ritual is complete. This is the creation of a final tableau, a work of art in their twisted view. The specific pose is a message. It might be arranged to express contempt, or a strange form of worship, or to recreate a scene from a fantasy or a piece of art. It is the killer's final signature on their work, the last word in their dark prayer. Even the choice of weapon is part of the liturgy. A gun is distant, remote. It's about power from afar. But a knife is intimate. It is up close, personal, and visceral. The choice reveals the kind of power the killer needs to feel. Do they need to feel like a distant, untouchable god, or do they need to feel the intimate, hands-on power of a sacrificial priest? Every act is a word. Every choice is a symbol. All of it woven together into a script that for one brief moment makes the raging storm in their mind go silent.
So the offering is chosen. The altar is prepared. The liturgy is performed. The victim, the location, and the method all come together to create a single, cohesive performance. A dark ritual designed to do one thing: to impose a moment of godlike order on a lifetime of inner chaos. The storm inside the killer's mind finally goes quiet. He has taken the ultimate fantasy of power from inside his head and made it real. He feels complete. He feels sane. But it's a temporary peace, a fleeting high, and soon the storm will return and the hunger for the ritual will begin all over again. This leads to one final, unsettling question. If this ritual is a private message the killer is sending to himself, why are we, the public, so profoundly fascinated by these dark ceremonies? The true crime podcasts, the documentaries, the endless analysis, what does our obsession say about us? The answer, from a Jungian perspective, is that on a deep, unconscious level, we recognize the language. These dark rituals are modern myths being acted out in real time. The serial killer, in their terrifying performance, touches upon the most ancient and powerful archetypes that exist in our own collective unconscious. The struggle between light and darkness, between order and chaos, between the sacred and the profane. We are mesmerized because we see a human being acting out the most extreme potentials of the human psyche, potentials that live dormant within the shadow of us all. Think about it. We live in a world that has, in many ways, lost its connection to meaningful ritual. The ancient ceremonies, the community rites of passage, the sacred traditions that once gave our ancestors a sense of order and meaning, they have faded from many of us. Our collective psyche is starved for ritual, for symbolism, for a connection to something larger than our mundane lives. And into that vacuum, into that spiritual hunger, we project our need for the sacred onto the profane. The serial killer, in a twisted way, becomes a dark priest for a secular age. Their crime scenes become our profane temples. Their methods become the liturgy we study. We are drawn to it because it is one of the few places in modern life where we see raw, unfiltered, terrifying meaning being created. To understand the symbolism in a killer's acts is not to condone them or to glorify them, it is to understand the darkest potentials of the human spirit when it is broken, isolated, and left to starve for meaning. It shows us that if the psyche cannot find a sacred ritual to participate in, it will create a profane one. It will build its own dark cathedral and worship its own dark gods. It's a terrifying testament to the human need for order and symbolism and the monstrous forms it can take when it has no healthy outlet. So, when you hear about these crimes, try to look past the chaos and the horror for a moment. Look at it through this lens. What symbols do you see? What dark story do you think is being told? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.